Joe Biden has declared war on Republican governors. With America's longest war in Afghanistan now over, there is new evidence that we aren't any safer than we were 20 years ago. Good evening, I'm Leland Vittert. America faces two great challenges tonight. 20 years ago, when we went to bed on September 10th, little did we know how the world would change and what would happen in the morning. New reporting from Holly McKay in Afghanistan says the Taliban is now training and recruiting suicide bombers. We're going to get to that reporting in just a minute. But first, to the immediate debate here in America. The fight of how to deal with COVID is no longer just a medical or a political debate, but it is very much now a legal debate. Here's President Biden today promising to take on 19 Republican governors who dare challenge his executive decrees, forcing 100 million Americans to get the vaccine or face unemployment.
Are calling your vaccine requirements an overreach? You are threatening to challenge it in court.
Have at it.
My friend Mike Allen of Axios, hardly an alarmist, writes in his morning note this: one big thing, America's civil war of 2021. Top Republicans are calling for a public uprising to protest President Biden's broad vaccine mandates 8 months after more than 500 people stormed the U.S. Capitol to try and overturn the election. There is near universal agreement that the president has the power to force vaccines on virtually all Americans. But his new decrees that require companies with more than 100 employees require the vaccine is right now facing some stiff legal challenges. Brian Weinthal litigates these issues. He's an attorney with Burke Warren, who specializes in employment law. Good to see you, Brian. Appreciate it. All right.
Good to see you.
Why do these Republican governors, or for that matter, some of your clients, have a chance here?
Well, ultimately, I think it's going to be difficult for many of those Republican governors to make a case because in all 50 of our states, there are currently requirements for children to be vaccinated against various diseases, be it mumps, rubella, measles, chickenpox, you name it. So ultimately, while many of these Republican governors are crying foul at the president, they're doing so under the knowledge and acknowledgement that they have vaccine mandates in place already in their own states.
They have these vaccine mandates, but specific to this of using OSHA and workplace safety to try and get at this and sort of do an end run around. In fact, the White House chief of staff retweeted this tweet. This is the White House's workaround to get Americans vaccinated. This could impact 80 million people, requiring all these businesses that have any sort of contract with the federal government. This is going to be a game changer. Ron Klain, the White House chief of staff, then retweeted this. This does seem, though, sort of an end run around vaccinating children using the OSHA standards.
Undoubtedly, there's going to be a major debate here about the use of executive power. And that's really what's at the heart of this. The question becomes whether the executive branch using OSHA can put something like this in place that has consequences for employers, specifically costs. As I'm sure you saw, employers are supposed to provide paid leave to their workforces, not only for vaccination, but for the aftermath.
And also, if the employees aren't vaccinated, then they have to get testing, and the employers have to pay for that. It does seem like an interesting workaround here because it's not the federal government mandating it. That's more of a political question than a legal one.
Well, but the upshot is most businesses that are forced to incur costs are going to turn around and look at the federal government, I think, for reimbursement on those costs. Think about the situation where the government takes your land for a certain purpose. They're required to provide compensation for that. Many workforces that have upwards of tens of thousands of employees that have to pay for paid time off are now going to say to the government, well, this was your mandate. Where's our reimbursement for what it is we paid for?
Where's our money? All right. Well, this is Jen Psaki explaining their goals. Take a listen.
75% of people in this country have been vaccinated, who are eligible have been vaccinated. 25% have not. So that's what our target is. That's what our objective is. No, our goal is not to place undue burden. Our goal is to save lives, and that's what we hope this will do.
Note, she didn't say, and we'll reimburse you. But if an employer calls you today and says, look, we don't want to have a vaccine mandate, and we don't want to pay for testing, what's your advice?
I would say for the moment, let's wait and see what the regulations look like. I'm not certain that we're going to see these regulations come into print. And the reason I say that is there are so many presumptive legal challenges that could be asserted here. It might be the case that the Biden administration is putting that in place to see what response they get. In other words, to see if anybody goes and gets vaccinated in advance. I don't know if that will occur.
Or if employers just say, hey, look, it's going to be too expensive and too much of a pain, we're going to put a vaccine mandate in rather than deal with it.
Well, exactly. If the writing is on the wall that this is coming down the pike anyway, both employees and employers might say to themselves, let's just go and get the shot, because ultimately we don't have to deal with the aftermath of the penalties that may come from bucking the trend if the policy is put in place.
And we have to make a distinction here between the federal employees, because that's pretty much settled. The federal employees have to get this or they lose their jobs. But for private employers, it's different. It does bring up a question, though. It seems as though, as president, he had wide-ranging powers to demand lots of other vaccine mandates, to get on an airplane, perhaps, or to get federal benefits. There were all these other things that would have been much more coercive that he didn't do that would have been legally a lot sounder. Fair?
I think it's fair, and I think the other thing that I'm surprised he didn't do was to tie the receipt of federal monies to vaccine mandates. For example, we know that educational money is one of the biggest spends for the government.
And highway funds.
And highway funds. What I thought he was going to do is stand on the stage and say, for any educational institutions that are getting federal money, you must now, going forward, have a vaccine mandate in place. He didn't. He came out and made a direct mandate to private business, which was actually a surprise.
Which one would have been legally easier to uphold?
Almost unconditionally, the idea of tying something to funds would have been easier to uphold, because if you're giving someone something, you can put conditions on what it takes to get that.
You're a smart lawyer. It seems as though probably there's some even smarter lawyers or equally smart lawyers at the White House.
I can tell you there are smarter lawyers out there.
Fair enough.
Much is for sure.
You said it, not me. But it makes you feel as though they knew this and therefore decided to go this OSHA route for a political reason, not a legal one.
I have to imagine that part of this was President Biden pushing back hard on these Republican governors that are simply making it difficult to get even basic safety measures in place, mask wearing, things of that nature. I have to believe that in putting something this strenuous and strengthful in place, that ultimately that was the goal here, to push back on that and show them that he was controlling the narrative, not them.
All right. Hey, Brian, really appreciate the insights. Thank you.
Always great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great to see you. I know you got a long weekend of work ahead, and more as the mandates come down. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, it is already September 11th in Afghanistan. The sun's going to rise in Kabul just a couple of hours from now. The Taliban reportedly planned to mark the anniversary with inaugurating its new government. No, we are not making that up. Here is the new government, including one minister who is on the FBI's most wanted list with a $10 million bounty on his head for killing Americans. A couple of the other ministers there on that list and on that screen were the ones who harbored bin Laden, because they were in the Taliban government back in the 90s. Evidently, the Taliban's friends and facilitators in Qatar convinced them that the inauguration on 9/11 was just a little too much, and the Taliban has delayed, but the sentiment was still there. So that brings us to a fundamental question. Are we safer tonight as we go to bed than we were 20 years ago tonight? Congressman Mark Green served in both Afghanistan and Iraq as a flight surgeon in the Army Special Operations Helicopter Squadron, now on the Foreign Affairs Committee. Good to see you, sir, as always. Thank you. Simple question. Are we safer tonight 20 years ago or not?
Absolutely not. And I think most Americans realize that. They're at the 100,000-foot view, we have the capability to deter terrorist attacks. The real question is, do we have the will? And with this president, his failure in this withdrawal from Afghanistan, his failure to confront the terrorists whom you just mentioned are in the Taliban government. They won't even call them terrorists. It's questionable whether or not this government, this president, has the will to protect Americans. The southern border,
I'm interested, though, in sort of this view of whether or not the Taliban is going to be the government that the White House hopes they are, or the government that they were in the past. Holly McKay is doing some incredible reporting from Afghanistan and went to a school, if you will, that the Taliban teaches new suicide bombers. We have some of her reporting. Take a listen.
Still at a beautiful, amazing place, but it seems very clear to me things are closed, people are staying in their homes, but I haven't witnessed any fighting, and the Taliban do seem to have full control of the region, as far as I can see.
As far as she can see, the question would be this: after she visited the school that trains suicide bombers, they openly admit this, if you're a reasonable, rational government in the international world, why do you need suicide bombers?
Well, that question answers itself, Leland. I mean, the real issue is you've got a group of people who made an agreement with the United States and completely disregarded the agreement when Biden became president. This was supposed to be a power sharing agreement with the Afghan government. They basically overthrew them, violating the agreement. Said they'd protect us and allowed suicide bombers into the Kabul, perimeter. I mean, they haven't fulfilled a single promise. And the crazies in our State Department, the crazy leadership of our State Department and our president somehow think that they're, born again people, new people. They're not. They're the same crazies that protected Al-Qaeda and supported terrorists flying aircraft into, the Twin Towers. This is insane.
You have to wonder if the Haqqani guys are just simply the new Osama bin Laden. President Biden, we understand this just came out in the past couple of minutes, is heading to New York tomorrow to commemorate 9/11, but he will not speak. Instead, he released a video, 6 minutes and 23 seconds in length. We've taken some of the parts of it. We're going to play that for you and get your reaction. Take a listen.
The 9/11 generation is stepping up to serve and protect in the face of terror, to get those terrorists who are responsible, to show everyone seeking to do harm to America that we will hunt you down and we will make you pay. And that will never stop. Yet we also witness the darker forces of human nature: fear and anger, resentment and violence against Muslim Americans, true and faithful followers of a peaceful religion. We saw a national unity bend.
Thoughts?
I'm appalled that he would even say those words. This is a moment to reflect on the men and women who died that day at the hands of the Islamic jihadist terrorists. To sit here and to blame us for responses is just, it's infuriating and insulting. How about those firemen? How about those police who ran to that burning building? Let's talk about those guys. All right. I just am.
Yeah, he did. In fairness, he did say that in part of his video. He made the other comment, which is I think what you were referring to. Real quick, I got about 20 seconds left. How long is the runway, you think, to get clear-eyed on who the Taliban is and deal with them before a group can use Afghanistan once again to launch an attack on the American homeland?
So I think there are many people who are clear-eyed. They know what their capability is, what their desire is to kill Americans, and they know our southern border is wide open. So there are people who recognize the issue. There are just other people in the administration who are blind or don't care, and that's Blinken and Joe Biden.
All right, Congressman Mark Green, we appreciate you joining us on a Friday. I know you've got a lot of ceremonies to be at tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks, Leland.
All right. Meanwhile, speaking of our enemies, we have seen Communist China publicly capitalizing on the U.S. chaotic and, frankly, embarrassing withdrawal in Afghanistan. Joe Biden and President Xi spoke for 90 minutes yesterday into the evening. According to Axios reporting in a piece by Jonathan Swan, great reporter, top Chinese officials have snubbed and lectured top Biden aides, and Beijing has used Biden's botched withdrawal from Afghanistan as a propaganda coup to elevate doubts about the competence and staying power of liberal democracies in general and the U.S. in particular. Wanted to bring you here over to the touchscreen. As we have reported, Chinese officials have cozied up to the Taliban. CNN reports Beijing is going to provide $31 million in food, winter weather supplies, and vaccines to Afghanistan. We're now over here at the touchscreen because we want to show you exactly why China is so interested in Afghanistan. This is their Belt and Road project to take over the infrastructure around the world, specifically here in East Asia and then spanning through over to Europe. This white part here is Afghanistan. So rather than coming here or going overland this way to Europe, they get to cut through Afghanistan. Why are they so interested in Afghanistan? We're going to switch to another map of Afghanistan itself to show you. It all comes down to minerals, mineral resources of Afghanistan. The Taliban is now sitting on $1 trillion of minerals. Remember, this is the Chinese border. The Chinese come in here. This is the most mineral-rich area. What are they most interested in there? Lithium and cobalt, key components to not only automobiles, but specifically to batteries in electric cars. An incredible resource for China. All right, what do they need to get all of these minerals here out? They need to take over Bagram Air Base. Switch to the satellite image of Bagram Air Base. This is the image right now. This is a map. So remember, this is where the mineral-rich area was right here. Bagram Air Base, Kabul right here. They come in this way. New reporting that there is a Chinese plan, at least in the next couple of years perhaps, to come into Kabul and come into Bagram with the Chinese military, their engineers, among others, to try and take over and then have an ability to project force out to get all of those minerals. That's the Chinese reported plan. Let's talk about that with Dr. Hai-Yun Ma, professor who teaches about these things and studies. And Professor, appreciate you being with us. Thank you. July 16th of this year, you wrote, China is worried about a post-U.S. Afghanistan. Beijing would have preferred U.S. troops to stay. Do you still believe that?
Well, really, I mean, on the one hand, China really wants the United States to stay in Afghanistan. As you can see, in the past 20 years, our United States military presence really protect the Chinese interest as well. So that's why I said this is really kind of mixed feeling. On the other hand, China really worried about the United States military presence in its neighboring country, Afghanistan. So that's why we said basically have kind of, on the one hand, you're welcome, on the other hand, you're really concerned about. It's a mixed feeling.
They're also probably pretty happy, not only that the U.S. is out, but how they left. The Global Times, which is the communist mouthpiece, has been talking about the U.S. humiliation and that the Taliban and the Chinese government are now having high-level meetings and the like. How long is it going to be, you think, before the Chinese really take over Afghanistan and a lot of the rights that we talked about?
Well, I really don't think China will take over Afghanistan. It's basically a pure speculation. If you look at, no matter, in terms of developing mineral resources or even, to have background military base, it's basically, pure speculation. You really cannot enter into Afghanistan without building concrete ground networks. And China, as you know, really lacks all this ethnic religious network in Afghanistan, unlike Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, Uzbekistan, or Tajikistan. So I don't think in short term, China will basically, China is able to enter into Afghanistan. I'm not really that optimistic.
Well, we'll see. They did say they weren't going to militarize all the Spratly Islands. That didn't take them long. Dr. Ma, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Have a good weekend. Coming up, why one publication is now calling President Biden's vaccine mandates a war on lower-income Americans. Two analysts on the left side of the aisle with their thoughts on that. Plus, we hear often about sanctuary laws and immigration, but now one state has passed a sanctuary gun rights law, scrapping the enforcement of federal gun regulations. And one pro-Second Amendment sheriff says he doesn't like it. We'll tell you why when we come back. They call it the Show Me State. My home state, Missouri, now sits in the crosshairs of a growing gun law battle between staunch defenders of the Second Amendment who think just about anybody should be able to carry just about any weapon. And on the other side, gun control promises and work by the Biden administration to, among other things, ban semi-automatic weapons. The Republican-controlled Missouri State Legislature passed a bill that is called the Second Amendment Preservation Act and forbids local law enforcement cooperation with federal agents trying to enforce certain gun cases. Similar bills are pending in at least 8 other states. Sheriff Brad Cole from Christian County, Missouri. He is a Republican. He supports the Second Amendment and has taken a stance against the law. And Sheriff Cole is here to explain that with us. Appreciate it, Sheriff. All right, you're for the Second Amendment, as I understand it. How can you be against something that is called the Second Amendment Preservation Act?
Well, staunch supporter of the Second Amendment. The bill that we're talking about, the Second Amendment Preservation Act, as it's labeled here in Missouri, creates some issues for us in law enforcement. And as you know, in law enforcement, we're here to protect the citizens that we serve and hold up law and order. And unfortunately, this bill has created an issue where we're not able to fully cooperate with our federal law enforcement partners to curtail violent crime and work with them to do that.
Have you had a case yet where you wanted to work with the feds on something you needed to get bad guys off the street and weren't able to?
Well, Leland, just last week I had a deputy shot by a violent criminal that has a felony history. So we're gonna find out here shortly how that's going to work. This is a guy that needs to be off the street forever. He has a violent criminal history past and several felony convictions. Who shot one of my deputies last week. So
but because of this law, because of this law, there's a chance that you guys can't get them off the streets for life?
Well, you know, the hope is that we're going to be able to do that. We currently have him charged with some state crime violations. Obviously, the federal violations have a lengthier sentence than what the state crimes do. So, yes, that would be a great asset to be able to work with our federal partners on this case.
Wow, that's stunning. As I understand it also, the law allows private citizens to sue departments if you get involved with the federal agents in a way that somebody doesn't like, and $50,000 fines.
Yeah, it's $50,000 fine, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the person that they believe they were offended against. The way the law is written, it can be any citizen. So I foresee several lawsuits in the near future for many agencies here in Missouri.
Well, that's fine. So in other words, if you work with the feds in a way that some Second Amendment activist doesn't like, on a completely unrelated case, they can sue you. It's almost like the Texas abortion law in a way, as I understand it.
It is. I don't know all the details of that, but yes, it can be anybody that sues us. It doesn't necessarily have to be the person that has been charged with the crime.
Wow, that's stunning. Sheriff, we want to understand how this affects getting the guy who shot your deputy off the street. You said your deputy was shot. We understand he's okay. We're glad for that, but we want to come back. We want you to come back and tell us about how this case plays out. All right?
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Sheriff Brad Cole from Christian County, Missouri. Thank you.
I am so disappointed that particularly some of the Republican governors have been so cavalier with the health of these kids, so cavalier with the health of their communities. We're playing for real here. This isn't a game.
President Biden says he's going to go to war with red state governors to save kids as it relates to COVID and masking mandates, especially in schools. But there's new data that shows the real threat to kids' lives in many states isn't COVID, but gun violence. An analysis of shooting data from City Data and the CDC shows that more children have been shot in Chicago, 280 this year, than have died due to COVID in the entire United States, 214. Now we do apples to apples. More children have been shot and killed by gun violence in Chicago this year, 35, than have died of COVID-19 in Chicago, a total of 6. So that is a multiple of more than 5. Anna Devolantes, radio host in Chicago, has covered the city for nearly 20 years and joins us now. Anna, when you're getting calls from folks in the city of Chicago, are they scared about gun violence or their kids getting COVID?
You know, I'm hearing from both things are affecting people's behavior. It depends on where you sit, I suppose. You know, the numbers you talk about and you have been talking about on your show, Leland, very much tell the story. If you look at 35 kids losing their lives to gun violence in the city of Chicago so far this year, one more thing to throw out at you, that's more than double the number of lives lost, kids' lives lost to COVID in the entire state of Illinois. So think about that for a second. If you want to talk about long haul symptoms, which so many of us are afraid of when it comes to COVID, what are the long haul symptoms, or the long haul impact to the children who witness violence or get shot? You had a 6-year-old child shot next to her sister who was shot and killed in the backseat of her mom's car. What's the long haul impact on a child like that? You can only imagine what's the long haul impact to a neighborhood when a 4-year-old child gets shot and killed inside a house while he's getting his hair cut. These are the kinds of very troubling things that we also have to think about when it comes to crime, not just COVID.
It brings up an important point because we've seen, if you take Illinois as an example, the governor here, Governor Pritzker, and the mayor here, Lori Lightfoot, is emblematic of blue state governors and Democratic mayors around the country. They have been so vocal about COVID and so vocal about mandates and shutdowns about COVID, but it seems as though they don't really want to talk much about gun violence. Why?
Well, the mayor does talk about gun violence because she's asked about it all the time. I'd say some of the others are hiding more behind their comms folks and are really hard to get a hold of. The courts, I would say, is one of them. Timothy Evans, he's in charge of it. And he certainly has, there are a lot of questions about what's happening. But Leland, the bottom line here is it's a tremendous moment of social reckoning in America, no doubt about it. So we've seen a number of these social justice measures passed, and we've seen a number of reforms and reforms still to come. However, I'm hearing now from leaders and others who say right now they are totally in support of that. And yet now the scales of justice have shifted in favor of the criminals in some cases over law-abiding citizens. And there doesn't seem to be an answer or anybody speaking up to talk about how you solve that problem. It's a real issue.
Well, so on one hand, you have the criminal justice reform movement, if you will, that moves towards going easier on criminals and allowing violent criminals out. But on the other hand, you've got these blue state governors and Democratic mayors who can't wait to put in place more COVID restrictions. That doesn't really go to civil liberties very much. Why the disconnect?
Well, in my history of covering governors and mayors in the state of Illinois, I will tell you that often the governors do not get involved in city issues. I would say right now it's a time when maybe they should. Maybe every political leader, every leader in the state of Illinois should lend their assistance to try to help solve this problem. I think that the city leadership hasn't asked for that. We haven't hard enough time getting our city leaders to get along with each other in order to stop finger pointing and come up with a unified approach to violence. When you talk about the state's attorney's office and the courts and the superintendent's office and the mayor's office, they're all on an entirely different page, and that's not solving any problems.
Yeah, especially the one where kids keep getting shot. Anna, thank you, as always. Good to see you.
Of course, Leland. Nice to see you, too.
All right. The South Dakota governor, Kristi Noem, telling President Biden, see you in court. The growing number of GOP governors are vowing lawsuits to block the vaccine mandates. We're going to talk about the politics behind that, plus how the vaccine mandate battle could reshape the political landscape. Two progressive analysts on whether the president's latest order could backfire on the very Democratic groups they're designed to help. A slew of Republican governors are blasting President Biden's vaccine mandates, calling the move an unconstitutional power grab, and are vowing to go to court to block it.
We live in America, and you would expect words like that from the president, maybe of communist China or of North Korea.
Business owners are calling me, telling me about how this is going to make it so hard for them to be able to run their businesses.
This is not a power that is delegated to the federal government. This is a power for states to decide. In South Dakota, we're going to be free, and we're going to make sure that we don't overstep our authority. So we will take action.
Ohio Republican Senate candidate J.D. Vance is urging citizens to resist, saying, quote, let's bring in, well, this is what they said. Do not comply with mandates. Do not pay the government fines. Don't allow yourself to be bullied and controlled. Only mass civil disobedience is going to save us from Joe Biden's naked authoritarianism. A man who does not like authoritarianism, but thankfully is not naked, Tony Katz, radio host from Indianapolis, is with us. Tony, good to see you.
Always.
It's interesting. It feels as though that this has ignited a flame among centrists and center-right folks who are pro-vaccine but anti-vaccine mandate.
Right. It's really about being anti-force. And Joe Biden has said, come and try me. I'm willing to go down every road. This is the eviction moratorium conversation all over again, where he admitted on camera that, yeah, I know it might only last a month or two to try and keep people from being evicted, but we're willing to give it a shot before the Supreme Court throws it down. This is, I don't know, an homage to the base, but there's a real big question about how much damage he's doing to the 2022 chances in the Senate and in the House. And that answer is tremendous amounts of damage.
You're in a pretty red state. What's the data point that says that he's doing damage in swing districts in Iowa or in Massachusetts or in North Carolina?
I think the argument is anecdotal. We don't yet have the data point. Okay. And the anecdotal argument would be as follows. Look, I believe that government has certain powers, but they can't do this. If you were to engage a full spectrum of people on the socioeconomic spectrum, they would all tell you that there are three branches of government and they have checks and balances on each other. So now we have Joe Biden going to an agency, which is responsible to no one except the agency, deciding power over the citizen. The citizen has no recourse. You go around and engage that anecdotal polling, and you'll find people say, oh, that dog won't hunt. That's what they'll tell you. This is not going to work. And for a guy who claims to have the SCOTUS on his side, Supreme Court decisions like Jacobson versus Massachusetts, but not yet utilize that, rather go through OSHA and the Department of Labor, it shows you how duplicitous it is.
It's an excellent point. I'm sure you were watching the top of the show and just wanted to make the point again, but there were so many things he could have done really quickly to bring down the power of the federal government and make people get vaccinated, but didn't want to spend the political capital on that, so did the end run with employers. The president, though, says, hey, don't worry, we're just doing this to protect everybody, including the vaccinated. Take a listen.
The bottom line, we're going to protect vaccinated workers from unvaccinated coworkers.
I'm confused. I thought vaccines worked.
That is exactly it, Leland. This conversation would go a whole lot better if Joe Biden understood the science. The vaccinated worker is protected from the unvaccinated worker. It's the unvaccinated worker who is not protected, and it really isn't even a vaccine. It's an inoculation, if we're honest. The World Health Organization has told us, if we're going to believe them, that this is here for forever. But you and I know, and rational people know, that COVID will be with us forever. The variants, the this, the that, the what have you. So it'll be like getting a flu shot. You do not end COVID by everybody getting quote unquote vaccinated. That's not how it works. I wish the president knew that.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of debate about trying to manage this to zero, and as you point out, just how difficult that is. Tony, always good to see you. Thank you.
Absolutely, man.
All right. The showdown over the vaccine mandates are impacting some of the most vulnerable in America. Census Bureau data this summer showed the vast majority of Americans who have not gotten the vaccine are largely lower income. The top bar representing those making under $25,000 a year. So you can imagine just how many jobs would be in jeopardy if those folks continue to hold out. The Washington Free Beacon today framed it, Biden declaring war on low-income families. The quote is, the cruelty is the point, folks. Obviously, that is the opinion part, not the fact part. All right, so how are progressives going to deal with this when so many people who they want to help are in the spot that they may lose their jobs if they don't get the vaccine? Two analysts from the left side of the aisle, Chris Hahn, host of the Aggressive Progressive, Jason Nicholas, senior lecturer at the University of Maryland who studies these things. Jason, start with you on the numbers. Does the Free Beacon have a point that the people who conceivably are going to lose their jobs the most over these mandates are the least fortunate among us?
So first of all, we don't know what the mandate says, and I think that's one of the things that's being misunderstood. OSHA is going to draft the final rule, and they're going to avoid many of the legal challenges. They're going to allow for religious exemptions. They're going to allow for people who fall under the Americans with Disabilities Act and others who may be able to opt out of the vaccine. There may even be some allowance for people who have already caught COVID. So we don't even necessarily know what the rule is going to be. We've only heard Joe Biden speak sternly because he is exhausted, as many of us are, with people being hospitalized and people dying over this vaccine or over this pandemic, when we have one of the major answers of slowing this pandemic down.
I understand being frustrated. I think all of us are frustrated. None of us like wearing masks. I mean, a lot of people have taken issue with trying to shame people or coerce people. It's been a way that hasn't necessarily worked. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of folks who maybe one or two of you agree with who want to go much farther. Take a listen.
There are privileges associated with being an American, that if you wish to have these privileges, you need to get vaccinated. Travel and having the right to travel interstate, it's not a constitutional right as far as I know.
Chris, I know in the Soviet Union, they check your papers when you go from city to city. I didn't know that was an American thing.
Oh, you definitely have a right to go from city to city as an American. It's part of our Constitution, not infringing on interstate commerce. That said, you don't have a right to go there on an airplane or on a train or in a bus. If you want to drive your own car, if you want to walk there, ride a horse, have at it. But you don't have a right to go on a plane. So I think people need to get vaccinated. I think Biden should have actually mandated vaccinations for air travel and train travel immediately, and bus travel,
It's
frankly.
fascinating that you brought that. Hold on, just Chris, I'm going to let you make your point, but I want to ask you a follow-up first. Why didn't he do that? Those were so easy. They're not subject to any kind of lawsuits. We know the president has the power to have these sweeping COVID vaccine mandates. He didn't do any of that. Instead, this end run with OSHA that challenges whether or not the executive rules really allow him to do it. Why the end run?
I think the industry has already taken up that challenge. Delta, other airlines are starting to require those vaccines for their employees and their passengers. So I think you're going to start to see that. And if we don't see
Chris, you could have tied vaccine mandates to federal benefits. You could have tied them to federal dollars for transportation to states. You could have done all sorts of things that would have been much easier legally and much more coercive, if you will. The president didn't do that. Why not?
You know what? I think he should, and I think he will. I think we've had enough with the carrots in this country. There are some people that need a stick, and it's time to get out the stick and get people vaccinated. The only way we're going to get this under control is to get people vaccinated. You have a right not to get vaccinated in this country. You don't have a right to give COVID-19 to somebody's kid who is unvaccinated. So people need to be a little bit more responsible. Stop listening to the quacks who are telling them that this is somehow going to change their life or make them sick or make them want to do Microsoft Excel or something. Go get vaccinated.
You know, Jason, I want to bring up this poll, which I thought was interesting. Working Americans continue to support vaccine requirements by their employer. 57%, which in a country as divided as we are, 57% is a lot of folks. Working Americans who say they want their employer to have a vaccine mandate. Do you think that poll number changes if you change it from employer mandate to government mandate?
I don't, honestly. I think that number, that 57%, represents people who want to see this pandemic end. So I don't think that number is going to change, whether it comes from the government. The government is compelling businesses. The business community has been behind it. As a matter of fact, the Business Roundtable led by Joshua Bolten, who was a former chief of staff to George W. Bush, he praised Joe Biden for this decision. Even the Chamber of Commerce, which is conservative, they've praised this decision by Joe Biden. So I think that number represents people like you and me who are tired of this pandemic. We want to be able to go to concerts and not have to worry. We worry about bringing it back to our children, whether we're vaccinated or not. We're concerned about those sorts of things, and I think that's what that 57% represents.
All right, I got about 20 seconds for each of you. Chris, how long, in your words, till the hammer comes down?
I think by the end of the year.
Wow.
If we're starting to see this thing spread out of control again late in the year, the hammer's coming down. People are there are going to be mandates tied to any legal reason to give it to somebody. And quite frankly, we've had enough. People got to grow up in this country.
Jason, you agree with that?
Yeah, I think by the end of the year sounds about right. Wow. I think that this pandemic has to end. We've got to show that this, I think that we also should still try to use the carrot rather than just the stick. But I definitely think
carrots are part of this. You got folks who now got paid time off to go get the vaccine, paid time off if they have any complications from it. Gents, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
Great conversation. Facebook and privacy are two words that don't usually mix well, but don't worry. New smart glasses are perhaps better, but really are they? And what about the privacy groups that say these are okay? When we come back. The next time you see someone with Ray-Bans on, you might want to be careful about what you're doing or saying, because just by looking at you, they could be taking a picture of you. Facebook has paired up with the designer brand to create smart glasses. You might remember Google miserably failed at making these a couple of years ago, but these allegedly are better. One concern remains is privacy. Several privacy experts have come out in support of the glasses, but when you dig a little deeper, you realize most of those privacy experts are funded by Facebook themselves. Judy Kurtz of The Hill joins us now. So, Judy, would you want these glasses to begin with?
Oh, I have to say, Leland, the glasses do look cool, but Facebook's handling of this launch and privacy concerns maybe not so cool. But I also should say that it's not exactly a shocker that Facebook isn't seeing 2020 when it comes to privacy concerns.
Okay, so as we understand it, what do the glasses do?
The glasses give you the ability to take photos without using your hands. You can speak to the glasses to get them to take a photo. You can also push a button on the glasses to get them to take photos. You can take videos, but that raises a lot of privacy concerns for folks who might just see you with a pair of glasses on and unknowingly be filmed. Facebook says that the glasses have a recording light that comes on when you are recording to let other people know. It doesn't exactly take a MacGyver type or a tech-savvy person to fashion some duct tape, I would say, over that recording light to lose the ability to let other people know that you are recording them.
Looks like a Sharpie could work too.
Sharpie works as well.
The idea is that the New York Times wrote this big review of these glasses and talked to privacy experts, and the privacy groups are funded by Facebook. Are all privacy groups now funded by Facebook? How would we know?
Yeah, the key issue here really is disclosure. It seems that Facebook basically tried to bamboozle the press by putting forth these privacy groups that seem like independent panels and arbiters, when in fact they're on the Facebook payroll.
I expected so much more from Mark Zuckerberg.
Well, this is classic Mark Zuckerberg, where he sort of builds this universe and then tries to control everything within that universe. We saw that, of course, with the years of criticism Facebook has received over accusations of bias. They hire some fact checkers who may or may not be fair. Same thing goes for banning former President Trump on the platform. That decision was made by the oversight board of Facebook. And who appoints the oversight board? Well, that's Mark Zuckerberg as well. And now he's creating this, I think the goal here is to create this AR world, augmented reality, and control that too.
Real quick, in 15 seconds or so, when can people buy these glasses? In other words, when should we all be worried that somebody's recording us with their Ray-Bans?
You should be worried right about now because they're going on sale. So watch out for those Ray-Bans.
All right, Judy, great conversation. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Leland.
All right, before we head off to the weekend, something you should see out of Australia. Let's hope it doesn't come to America.